Hello, and welcome to the P3 Power Boost Podcast. I'm Lisa Thomas, your host, and we're going to be speaking with real business women with real issues in real time. They still have to perform on purpose and deliver extraordinary results. Can't wait for you to meet each of our guests as they navigate the waters of success while addressing the real issues in real time. So we're here with Michele Horn, who is the president of LandArt Solutions in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we're excited to have her on the P3 Power Boost podcast. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I just thought we would just dive right in. So why don't you share, number one, what you do and how long you've been in business? That'll give our audience a little bit about you.
Sure. So, own two companies, both in the construction space. LandArt Solutions is a landscape construction company that's was formed in 2008, right as the rest of the economy was tanking. We were building. And so been around for 15 years started in the government space, working at Fort Bragg, our neighbors here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then have since grown to working across the state on a myriad of projects, from residential to commercial to government projects. And then ForeverLawn of the Carolinas is our synthetic turf company, also in the construction space, but installing synthetic turf on properties. Started that in 2014. 2014, and been at that for a little while, working on this in a smaller area there, working in Wake County and all the joining counties between Wake and Cumberland, and employ over 25 employees across both companies, from a myriad of folks in the field working and doing the installs to management team members, both here in our office in Fayetteville, as well as remotely working from their homes up in the Triangle area.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And congratulations. There's obviously data out there that talks about the 20% that fail, right, in the first year being in business. And then what's really even staggering is only 15% of businesses make it past 15 years. So this is tremendous celebration, right, to be in that sort of space. And so how timely is it to talk about your growth and how you got here, given what's happening in the economy? And there are a lot of businesses who are afraid and they're dealing with all kinds of things right now. So my question is going to be, how did you get there? How did you manage to get to 15 years? More importantly, how did you make it through that first year, if you can remember?
Well, I think no matter what year you're in, it's being an entrepreneur and a business owner is rolling up your sleeves and working hard, and not forgetting where you came from in terms of from that startup stage to where the company is now. And it takes a different kind of work, a different kind of rolling up your sleeves, but in the end, it's all very much the same in terms of building a vision and setting the stage for, in the beginning, obviously, myself to implement. And then as we've grown over the years and employed more staff to join the team, then it becomes about setting the vision and empowering the rest of the team to make it so and put it into motion.
Would you suggest that, and you know what we do, right? Working with small business enterprises owned by women, and they're generally at $1 million. That's the least amount of revenue, and then or at least at 5 million, right? So it's sort of in between. And we've discovered that there is sort of a break, I'm going to say, or a moment of demarcation, I guess I could use that word, when the business owner has to shift a bit to create growth. I would think, and you tell me your thoughts, to grow from early stages to several $1 million, is that different thinking? Do you think it's different thinking? What do you think it actually takes to grow in larger revenue or increased revenue?
Yeah, most definitely. It's definitely different kinds of thinking. In the beginning, when you're a startup company, um, every not that every dollar doesn't count now, but every penny counted back then,
Yeah.
and there were reasons that you didn't feel like you could spend certain amounts of money on on either products or people or whatever it
Hmm.
was. You looked at things from a very different lens. And then when you start to get into the multi-million dollars, you shift your thinking, and you quickly learn that a lot of times you have to spend money to make money,
Hmm.
and that's not often the way you think of it when you start out. You have to uh, you learn very quickly that you have to make decisions
Hmm.
very quickly so that the rest of your team can implement them. When it's
Hmm.
just you and a couple of people, decisions can take a little bit longer to make
Hmm.
because there's not as much of a repercussion as there is when there's a larger team at play. And so
Hmm.
decision making has to occur much faster. And then certainly having clear direction for the rest of the team so that um, there's not a fallout, because that's how you lose money quickly.
Oh yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. So I'm glad you mentioned the quick decision making and the ability to transfer those decisions to your team, right? And then I would suggest that there's probably some level of trust that they would deliver, right?
Hmm.
Because in the very beginning, you could trust yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
now you have to put your faith in a team. You also spoke about money. I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. Curious about that. So, how did you make that leap of being able to sort of trust your team to deliver? That's a scary thing, I would think.
Certainly, I think it comes from making the right hire,
Uh-huh.
and certainly we've had mistakes in that area. So you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
I just said this, I think, yesterday to someone else, that um, we learn more from our mistakes than we do our successes. And so the same with your team members, right?
Hmm.
So they're not going to be perfect right out of the gate, and so learning to trust them through their mistakes is often one of the hardest parts.
Hmm.
Because you can see, sometimes you can see their mistakes before they make them, and so sometimes that's something where you can mitigate it and then kind of redirect or counsel. And other times, if you set the course, and you just learn to trust, and then start to give them a little bit longer leash as they start to build that trust within you.
Hmm.
It's a balance, and it also really hurts if they make a mistake that you didn't set them up for success and you knew better. And so
Hmm.
then I think that falls back on leadership to make sure that they had all the tools they needed to succeed.
Hmm. Absolutely. And what do you think was the sort of catalyst for you to get to that point that you could, what you just articulated is very powerful, right? That you learn from the mistakes, and most of the time it's you learn more from your failures than your successes. But you also said that there's the faith that you have in them, and then there's also having to reflect, right? When there's a mistake or a challenge that you face because of a decision that you made, or you put your trust in that individual. How did you get to a point where you were able to navigate those waters powerfully?
I think that's a constant evolution. I don't know. Uh, there's different levels of powerfully, right? And so
Yeah.
I think I still am growing in that area, and I guess it depends on how big or how monumental the problem or decision is, or project even.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's almost like we think about a toddler growing up and making mistakes and learning and developing, and growing from that. I think it's very similar in entrepreneurial life. We we make the smaller stumbling mistakes, both as the leader, but then as when we're doing it ourselves, but also as a leader of others who are doing it for you.
Hmm.
And I think it's just building blocks. And I hope I never have completely mastered it all, because that means I've stopped growing.
Yeah.
So I very much enjoy the journey of getting better and bettering myself, both personally and for my team.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, and just full for everyone. We've had a chance to work together and support Michelle in her growth, and so we've had the privilege of watching her just really grow the business and step into the shoes of an extraordinary businesswoman. So I wanted to ask the question. So I'm asking these questions, even though I may know some of these answers, but I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that finances is one of those things in the early stages where you're just kind of holding on to every penny, and you
Hmm.
can barely see how spending more money could really bring you additional revenue. And it's a tough thing, right? Because you don't have the money that you need, and at the same time you have to spend what you have. What was the moment, if you can think of it, that made the difference so that you could begin to invest in your business to bring you where you are?
Hmm. Well, I would have to say it'd be you, Lisa Thomas, and working with the P3 group. I think that you don't. We often have discussion about you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
and until you've learned it. And so, um, I think there are still lessons for me in that,
Hmm.
in terms of spending money I don't feel like I have, for growth.
Hmm.
And it's just an economy of scale. In the early days, it would have been, well, case in point, I think 3 or 4 years we spent with our office in a spare bedroom in
Hmm.
our home. And we had a truck. We
Hmm.
had two trucks and employees. And the thought of paying rent monthly for an office sounded absolutely, like, it
Yeah.
was so scary to think that I would have a lease payment once a month to rent an office space when I had a perfectly good spare
Right.
bedroom.
Right.
Why would I do that? And so, small little example of spending money to make money, to be a more
Hmm.
credible business in the community and have a footprint. And so, I think there are many more milestones just like that one in the life of a business owner. To now, 14 vehicles and six pieces of large construction equipment in, many employees and office space we've been leasing for 12 years. It just changes, and now it's something much larger about an
Hmm.
investment. And I don't know that it ever completely goes away. I think there's still a little
Sure.
bit of fear, but certainly, just like the lessons of failure, you build on it and you grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was just listening, to you as you were sharing the results, right? You've got these trucks and you have these employees. And so when you were in your home, how many employees did you have? Just curious for the audience so they know.
So we had three employees, and when we started, we were not taking a salary, so we were just paying the
Mhm.
employees, and we were
Yeah,
just making it work.
right. Which is fantastic. And how many trucks at that point? Just one
Just
truck.
one,
Just one truck. And we're now at 20, one dump
one
truck. We're
dump
at
truck,
25 employees. And how many trucks? 14.
14 vehicles. I think it's a combination of trucks and sales cars, and
Yeah. So
yes.
it's really just a true example of what can happen when you invest in the business, right? And it just seems so
Mhm.
such like a big hurdle to overcome in your mind, at least. But once you make that leap, there's the world of possibilities. I would also suggest too that, we've talked about how you shift your thinking, but there was also a strategy, I would think, a plan that you had in place to accomplish those goals. No?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, just setting a vision and setting a 5 year plan, a
Mhm.
10 year plan. Sometimes it's a
Mhm.
quarterly plan, but setting the bigger vision and then breaking it down into smaller, manageable chunks. Most definitely, embarking on a strategic plan, which is what we did with the P3 group, and figuring out what our course was, what we wanted out of the business, what we wanted
Mhm.
out of life, and then figuring out how to navigate those steps
Yeah,
forward.
absolutely.
And oftentimes, when you get stuck, it's dusting off the plan. And I think so many businesses that don't work with a consultant or a team of supportive people like the P3 group, you check those boxes early on in your business, and oh yeah, I've got a
Yeah.
plan, I have a business plan, or I set my vision, but then just get stuck in the weeds of working and not lifting your head to assess and check where you are, and make sure you're still on course, or pushing the gas to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
improvements.
And it's easy. I mean, it's easy to do that, right? You're in the, yeah.
It's very easy.
You get your head in the sand, and before you know it, it's like you look up and it's 2 or 3 years. You haven't even looked at your plan. You're just solving problems and putting out fires. And, but to really
Yeah.
lead yourself to that kind of success, you want to revisit that plan and take a look at the results and look at the things that you can improve upon and increase in value, meaning investing in people, processes, and systems and things of that nature. So, and I think you guys have done that extremely well. We're going to take a short break here and then come back. And I want to talk a little bit about you and your business partner. So I think that's a very important piece that we want to highlight. And then secondly, I want to talk a little bit about, we talked about capital, which is one of the areas, by the way, that keeps people from this 15-year mark. Capital is one of them. They just completely stop and they just get stuck. And so the growth doesn't happen. They become stagnated or they fail altogether. So I want to talk a little bit about that. The other thing that gets in the way of people succeeding and getting to this 15-year mark is having the right team. You talked about that. So we'll talk a little bit about how you've been able to address the team issue and getting the right people on the team because you've reached 15 years. And then the other is competition. How do you sort of stand out in the crowd with many landscapers out there like yourself? How do you stand out from the crowd? So when we come back, we'll talk about those things.
Thank you for listening to this segment of the P3 Power Boost podcast, where we discuss real issues for real business women in real time. What you are about to hear is the internal dialogue of other business women like you. Check it out.
Okay, what was my affirmation again? Stay focused. Stay focused. But you have a big meeting today. You know good and well you're not really ready for it. You're going to have to face this guy. I mean, I know he's been difficult and I know that he's challenging. He's your COO. He's a leader. He's not performing. But how do you lead in a way that will move the needle forward? Okay, that's right. I'm supposed to be saying affirmations. I am powerful. I am extraordinary. I am one of a kind. I mean, Jesus, it's going to be a tough day. This internal chatter that many bossy business women face is what we address within the P3 Group's program, LEAP. We create a strategic plan. We support your leadership team in coaching and educating them on being extraordinary leaders. But what about you as the CEO? who's challenged by the team, by the growth of the company, by the change that you're going through, as well as the financials. This and all that women face is what we address within the LEAP program. Join us at leap.thep3group.com. We're back with Michele Horn, president of LandArt Solutions and ForeverLawn. So, welcome back, Michele. Excited to continue our conversation. So, one of the things I said that I wanted to talk about is one of the reasons that businesses do fail is capital, the right people, competition. There's actually several other, but those are the ones that I think would be great to talk about. How do you find the right people now?
That is the $1,000,000 question.
How do you find the right people?
So this may be, I think we've over the last 3 years done a lot of work to find the right people, upper management level people. And that takes what seems like a seriously long amount of time. It takes you going outside of your comfort zone in salary compensation. It takes hiring people smarter than you in certain disciplines. And, you definitely have to surround yourself with people that are, like and care about, and share your values and fit into your company culture. And so I think early on in the start of the business, it was just about that. Were they a good fit? And that was the only box. And then you start to realize that they could be really nice, but if they can't do their job, that just doesn't work. And if they're not able to move the needle forward. And so we still certainly have a lot of work to do in that area, on the lowest level of our company. We are a company that works out in the dirt every day. And so, there's a different caliber of person that wants to do that as a career or do that to support their family. And so you take that level of person up to an upper management that works in the office and manages people or has degrees in architecture or construction management, and it's a large spectrum. And so I think it starts with company culture, and I think I've learned that hiring somebody that fits the role is far more important than hiring somebody that seems like a great fit for the company. And so been down that road where hiring for a certain role and found a great candidate, but not a great candidate for the role I was hiring. And so that too becomes problematic. And not too long ago, it's been maybe 2 weeks, had an interview for someone that was interviewing for a sales position. And it was a female. We got along great. It was a great interview. We had personal, just connected personally, connected professionally. But she wasn't really a salesperson in the way I needed her to be a salesperson. I could see her on the team, but not for what I was interviewing her for.
Sure.
And she, we both kind of came to that through the interview process, where she was self-aware enough to say, I don't think I fit the role you're asking for. And I said, I agree, you don't. And if something opens up in the future, we can talk about that. So I think you have to cast your net in a large way in terms of employees. We've done a multitude of different things, from Indeed, LinkedIn, NC Works, different platforms. Um, Word of mouth and personal connections have always been the best hire,
Mm-hmm.
but those always take the longest and are often the hardest to if your network isn't um, large enough to find the right candidates for the certain position that you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd underscore the for some business owners, not all. We work with tons of them where, to your point, there's a connection, right? You interview someone, there's a connection. You like them, they love you, they love the vision, they all of that, but they're not a fit for the role, right? And I think that's something to for our audience who's listening to start to adopt a new practice of really looking at who you need, distinct from who you like, right? You can like them, but they also need to be able to fulfill on the role. And to your point, you do have to cast that net wide. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it's a really hard muscle to exercise when you're a small business and
Mhm.
you're trying to hire amongst doing all the other things in your business. And when you find somebody that's a really great person and you feel like you can trust them, um, early on, it feels really good to just, yeah, I found a great person. I'm going to bring them on.
Hmm.
And in the end, it's the wrong decision. So just be patient and wait it out and keep interviewing and keep searching until you find the right candidate for the role you're hiring.
Yeah, yeah. It's a muscle. To your point, it's a muscle to flex, for sure.
Mm.
But in the long run, it's worth it. And then the thing I think the other piece of this to add on to it is, even for us within P3 as well as some of our clients, is knowing that that's a part of the process, right? That larger corporations, billion with a B, there is constant hiring, right?
Yep.
There's constant hiring. That's a part of the system. It's a part of the process. And so, really becoming comfortable with that as a part of the business system running starts to give you some relief. And also mastering the process of finding the right candidate and being sure that you have the right person in the right position. But I think it is a strong muscle to build in the beginning stages,
Right.
for
It's
sure.
a very hard muscle to build.
It is. It is. It is. And so, what about competition, right? So, how do you sort of navigate those waters?
Hmm. So, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know the number, but there are a heck of a lot of landscapers everywhere you go,
Yes.
right? Or
Yes.
people that call themselves landscapers.
Yeah.
And so, being located in a military town, both active duty and retirees often will, as a side hustle, have a lawnmower and a trailer and a truck
Mm-hmm.
and call themselves landscapers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that level of competition. Certainly, I think we don't run side by side. I think we run in different arenas, and
Mm-hmm.
so then there is some other competition that are of the same scale and magnitude of work that we perform
Mm-hmm.
here in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I don't even think of them as competition. We do such different work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're competition sometimes for hiring, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think we're more stringent in our hiring practices. So even that, kind of sifts itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Honestly, we being in Fayetteville, we bid against some of the larger, well-established companies, landscape companies in the Raleigh and Charlotte market,
Mm-hmm.
and they're our biggest competition, and they are billion-dollar companies um, with branches across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
We competitively go to pricing exercises for projects, and we are neck and neck in terms of pricing and the level of competition. Now, I don't know if they look at me as their competition, but they're my competition.
Right.
I don't know if we have the same lens,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it's a very weird set of circumstances to be a company that is $5 million or less, going against and bidding on and pricing projects
Mm-hmm.
in the 750 to $1.5 million space for a landscape project, and going against multi-billionaire corporations for the
Mm-hmm.
same project.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it comes down to scope and price. And so, yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I heard a couple of things in what you said, right? So you don't think about competition,
Mm-mm.
right? I think there's value in knowing who's out there, right? But what I heard you say is that it's not a deciding factor if you're going to go after something,
Nope.
right? Not worried about the $1 billion guy or the multi-million-dollar guy. Really, is it in line with bringing people outside as your vision,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a part of what you can deliver and with integrity and inside of your core values? And is it something that you would be inspired by, right? To move your plan forward. And so I do believe that competition is an interesting thing. It's noted as one of the areas that supports failure because people put their eye on it and they try to compare themselves, I would imagine. Because when you start talking about competition, there's how do I match it? How do I be better? All those things. And it starts to take you away from the real value, which is your vision, your mission, your core values, what you're up to, your strategic plan, your goals, and all those things. I always say when people ask me about competition, I go, what competition?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that arrogantly. It's just I'm not thinking about it. It's just not
Right.
where my attention is. So I think there's great value in your growth and your ability to have this longevity because you're not looking there. But I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what most businesses who succeed, that's how they operate. Um, so the other is about, we talked about the right team, we talked about competition, and then there's capital. We talked a little bit about that. But I do want to ask a question because that's also an area, right? And we talked a little bit about it in the first segment. What do you say is, how has it, um, we talked about how it's helped you grow, but how has it kept you where you are, right? Lack thereof, how you think about it, how you approach it. How do you think it may have limited? And this is a question I know that your brain may not be thinking about. Just consider it. How do you think it may have limited your growth?
Oh, I'm sure it's limited growth. I know that, uh, and money has so many different layers. There's cash in the bank. There's the cash flow and the
Mm-hmm.
liquidity. There's what does your P&L look
Mm-hmm.
like? Um, all the
Mm-hmm.
things. And so, um, I know that capital has kept us from making certain decisions about bidding on a project because of its
Mm-hmm.
size, about taking the next big leap for perhaps a capital
Mm-hmm.
expenditure, whether it was another asset, a truck, or
Mm-hmm.
a fleet, a piece of machinery like a skid loader or something. And I also know that it, similar to kind of the roots of personally, where, oh, quick, pay off your car so you don't have car
Uh-huh.
payment, right? And then right around in that old car, no matter how much it costs to service it, because you own it, you don't have a
That's right.
payment. And so, we think about, I think that also in business has been a big lesson. Oh, we don't want to get rid of that vehicle. We've paid it off. Why would we get rid of it? It's not costing
Yeah.
us anything. Yet it really is. It's costing you a ton of money because of the maintenance and all the things involved
Mm-hmm.
in it. And so, access to capital is sometimes very difficult for small
Mm-hmm.
business, particularly a business that's
Mm-hmm.
growing, um, particularly a business in the construction space that is not net 30 on
Mm-hmm.
anything. So, um, you know, trying to have the liquidity in a current situation, when you start to work on larger jobs in construction, and one job might have a receivable for the month of over 200,000. Well, if you don't get that payment for 120
Yeah.
days, what do you do with that, and how do you cash roll the rest of the projects you're working
Yes.
on? So most definitely, capital is, particularly in the construction space, I feel, where we don't have a lot of recurring
Mm-hmm.
revenue. It's constantly pushing the
Mm-hmm.
flywheel to finish and complete new sets of projects, and then use those funds to feed and fodder the next project that we're working
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense, right? It's capital being one of the things that can limit your growth because of cash flow, who's going to do it, like who's going to invest in it, what is going to be that story I can tell so that happens maybe even back in the same place as before. I'm not sure I can, and if I do, what does that mean? I have a perfectly good truck. I'm not gonna. I have a bedroom here. I can use that, right? Same scenario, different,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
different situation, different time. And it does. And so for every level of growth, I think the capital is going to be a conversation, right? It's going to be one. And yeah,
Absolutely.
and there's data out there that talks about the difficulty of women really getting capital, and primarily they're probably not asking. So we'll talk about that. But I didn't want to cut you off. You were going to say something.
Well, no, I think if it's a vehicle, or if it's a piece of equipment, um, those are
Purchases.
sometimes smaller
Mm-hmm.
price tags, right? 100,000,
Mm-hmm.
150,000 at most. And so, even of the evolution of a business, again, the lease payment on an office, or the the purchase or the down payment of some kind of new asset, um, they're building blocks, and they just start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what used to be a $10,000 payment on something is now a $150,000 payment. And so it's just an economy of scale, and learning to be comfortable in that. And it eventually outgrows what you would even have in overall
Mm-hmm.
assets.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and sometimes you don't think about that side of it, right? Because you just one of the things you said is you've got these assets over here, right? But then you look at it's kind of like we were talking about the numbers just now. It says, "Oh God, it looks like I've got a margin," or "Oh God, I've got a negative margin." You can have all of these great assets, but you're not looking at that as a part of the story, right? You're just looking at okay,
Hmm.
cash flow today, net. I may not get this for 120 days, and and then you panic. Distinct from the entire picture that begins
Right.
to set you up for access to capital when there are other opportunities awaiting to do that for women in business. So I'm excited about the next level of success for Landar as you continue to grow, and we hopefully we can be a part of that and support your growth there. Last and final question, and this may be a long answer. You tell me. How is it working with your husband as your partner?
Well, you we have an interesting relationship, in that, we've always been best friends to start, and so that has continued through this journey with owning two businesses. 15 years in, this is our 25th anniversary come May, wedding anniversary, and raising two kids, one's off in college, and so I think we really know each other. That can be good and bad, right? We know how to leverage each other in decision making. We typically know what the reaction is going to be before we get it, because we know each other so well. But we also very much trust each other, and we know each other's weaknesses. And I think I am strong in areas that he has weakness, and vice versa. He very much has some strengths and some tenacity in areas where I draw back. And so it is definitely it is a joy to be in business with my spouse, but it is also an area where you never leave work, and that becomes the difficult part. If you wish to have some space between life and work, that becomes difficult, and that's a muscle that we're still building, honestly. Because work conversations do seep into so much of our life.
Yeah. Well, that's the case for any entrepreneur, right? That it's an all-consuming thing, and so boundaries are certainly important. I said that was going to be my final question, but I'm going to ask this one too, because it's important for every woman. So, how do you create fun?
You're asking the wrong girl. I already told you we don't celebrate.
I'm demanding a party invitation.
I very much enjoy entertaining, and so that's how I create fun. And it's probably more about my personal fun than it is about my spouse's idea of fun. I like nothing more than having a house or a backyard full of people, and just enjoying each other's company, telling stories, and good food and good wine is always extremely important in that aspect. And so that's fun to me. I love long lasting friendships, and bringing people together. And I do so much entertaining in my backyard outside, from April until probably October. It just, in warm weather, cooler weather, we'll throw on a fire, but love being outside. So much so that some of my friends are like, "Can we go inside?" I'm like, "No, use the bug spray. You're good."
Right. Be outside. This is the whole point. The whole point was to bring you outside. I love
That's
it.
right.
I love it. So much in alignment with your vision. So how delightful is it that you can have a holistic, I'm going to say, life where you include fun that's consistent with the vision too. Michele, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been wonderful. Scaling your business requires innovation sometimes. You have to learn to color outside of the lines. It means you have to take a leap into unfamiliar territory. So, many businesses, just like yours, are taking a leap. Join us so you can leap into profits. Leap.thep3group.com